Hauntings in Ring Road, Malawi, a true story written by Noel Villarosa. Whenever we hear a paranormal story, some would take it as fanciful, figurative, and portentous. We asked ourselves, what happens after we die, or what would be our transition? With these asking, ghosts and apparitions connected. This is a true story, and you won't believe that it happens in real life. I am sharing with you now an anecdote of the hauntings in Ring Road, Malawi. In the year 1980, Luis and Andrea Santaman temporarily moved to Blantyre, Malawi, with their 5 children, Robert, Anita, Jasmine, Jessica, and Milo. Luis was a geodetic engineer who was chosen to work for the government of Malawi as the chief engineer under the Ministry of Lands. At that time the government was still partially run by Britain. Out of the 5 siblings, only Anita and Jessica were born in the Philippines. Robert was born in Nigeria, while Jasmine and Milo were in Malawi. Among the 5 siblings, Jessica has the most awakened third eye. Jessica started seeing paranormal at the age of 9 years old. Blantyre, Malawi has a British backstory. It is surrounded by other bigger neighbors, by Mozambique to the east, south, and southeast, by Zambia to the west, by Tanzania to the east and northeast. Paranormal events started when they arrived at Blantyre from Lilongwe at almost sunset. The house is a bungalow type. It looked spooky with those windows just like in the Amityville house. When the family arrived in, the house was not in the usual way. The government personnel just handed over the key to the house without touring them inside and left instantly as if scared of something. The house was a little topsy-turvy and the last occupant seemed to have been in a rush. Andrea told to her children that the house looked creepy. There were kids' toys left in weird places of the house. Each room had wooden cribs. The front lawn grass was waist high. The lights were dimmed, and some bulbs were not working. The next day, Luis changed all the bulbs and set a spotlight into the huge garden, emphasizing a tree with a swing attached. The garden looked bright as day. The house has a patio, with paver material made of stones, clay brick, or even natural stone. Weeds tend to grow through them. During the night all the siblings slept in the master room without curtains. They could see the shadow of the rope swing in the garden. One day, Luis was on a field project and did not come home for 2 weeks. The siblings decided to sleep with their mother. Robert, the eldest among the siblings, made an Ouija board to call the spirits, but was never a success. They had to perform this at midnight to form a circle. Jessica was so scared of that board, so she hid it under the box filled with comics. When the 3 sisters returned to their rooms, they noticed that whenever their mom would tuck them to bed and lights turned off, there were strange things happened. The dachshund would scratch on the door, squealing like something was after her. After a while of panic, she would let out a yell, like someone just kicked her. Then she would leave the door. A sound of footsteps would start from the door as soon as the dog leaves. The footsteps sounded a little heavy and squeaky, similar to rubber boots. As soon as the steps have begun, they all lay still and pretended they were asleep. The steps would travel from bed to bed, stopping next to each bed for a few minutes like it was checking if they were all asleep. Sometimes the footsteps would stop at the comic box at the foot of the elder sister where the Ouija board was. They could hear it like it was going through pages of the comics. The 3 sisters just shut their eyes and kept still till it left their room. At exactly past midnight their room changed into a new dimension, screeching sounds of tree branches on the rooftop followed by the sound of the wind. They even saw shadows of tree branches swaying coming through the curtains. When they peeked through the window, everything was still and silent. The thunderstorm sounded suddenly but disappeared during daybreak. One night Jasmine and Jessica were crawling in the dark when the strange footsteps caught them by surprise. It ran from the corridor door and straight towards them. They panicked because they can feel that it was mad. The footsteps were heavier than the usual, like it was stamping and heading towards them in speed. They got on their feet and went hurriedly to their mother's room and slept on the cold floor, too scared to get back to bed because they could feel it was just watching them from the door but cannot come inside the master bedroom. The days after, the siblings never learned their lesson, as they stayed awake, and the footsteps kept getting mad at night. Until one day it came by to Jessica's bedside really mad because it knew they were not asleep. It shook their bed. Jessica didn't budge. Later, it went straight to the full-body mirror table between their beds and shook it hard. They decided later that once it left, to call it a night. The next day they crept out of bed in the dark, and when they were crossing the corridor, the footsteps started charging again, so they ran to their eldest sister's room and jumped into the double-decker bed. They crouched with their knees to their head and didn't even peek. It stood right in front of them. It stopped for a while, and as sunrise arrived, it returned to the corridor and disappeared. The eldest sister told her younger sisters to stop staying awake at night or everything will worsen. She told them that she saw a white lady silhouette passing by her door. She guessed that the figure was fitting the description of a nanny. That is why it was mad when they stayed awake at night. After hearing their eldest sister's story, they got really scared and Jessica started having insomnia. Even Andrea could hear someone calling and watching her. Every time the siblings played outside, they would suddenly stop because Jessica could sense somebody was staring at them from the windows. One day the three sisters went to the house just across the road and asked about the house they were occupying. The good neighbor told them that someone died in the house and the next family who lived there did not stay long. Andrea knew something weird about that house, but she never shared it with her children until they returned to the Philippines, where she shared her experiences in that house. The family just learned how to live with it by sleeping early. They learned also that it was not an evil spirit but was just caring for them. They just decided to leave the spirit alone and make sure that they get early to bed. They decided to quit their night escapades to stop the paranormal events. Until this day, the three sisters are sleeping with lights on because they have so many weird experiences in the Malawi house, and it jolted them mostly during the dark. In the afterlife, there could be an intentional haunting by those who have died and never reacquainted to the realm they belong now and have not moved on. They consider us as psychic mediums begging to communicate and guide them by getting onto the light or helping them fathom the unfathomed situation.